My name is Brent McLeod. I'm 57 years old, and I spent 5 years funding a family that spent those same 5 years quietly replacing me. The moment I understood that wasn't a fight or a confrontation, it was a photograph. A Facebook post on a Sunday afternoon in October, Thanksgiving weekend, while I was sitting in my truck outside a Staples in Barrie with a bag of printer ink I didn't actually need because I hadn't known what else to do with myself that afternoon. My son had told me 3 weeks earlier that Thanksgiving was at his wife's parents' place up in Muskoka this year, the cottage. He said it casually, the way you mentioned the weather, and I said sounds good, and neither of us said anything else about it. I didn't ask if I was invited because I'd learned not to ask questions where the answer might be something I'd have to absorb in front of another person. So I drove to Staples. The photo loaded slow on the parking lot Wi-Fi. Thanksgiving at the lake. Long table on the dock, the kind of setup that takes an hour, and someone with vision. My daughter-in-law's father at the head of the table with a paper crown on, the kind you get in a Christmas cracker. My son beside him with his arm around my daughter-in-law. My grandson, 7 years old, leaning back in his chair the way he does when he's full and happy. My granddaughter, 4, in somebody's lap with turkey gravy on her chin. The caption said, "Grateful for 3 generations at the table." I counted the people, 9. Then I counted the chairs, 9. Not one empty. I looked at my grandson's face in the photo for a while. He was grinning at something off camera. He'd lost a tooth 2 weeks earlier, and I was one of maybe 6 people in the world who knew that, because I was the one with him when it happened, when he bit into an apple at my kitchen table and held it up like he'd won something. I didn't comment on the post. I didn't call. I put my phone face down on the passenger seat, drove home, and sat in my driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside. Before I get into the rest of it, take a second to like and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Now let me take you back to how we got here. My wife and I had our son when we were both 24. She was a kindergarten teacher. I spent 32 years as a millwright at a parts manufacturing plant outside Barrie, then took early retirement and started a small property maintenance company. Painting, minor repairs, seasonal work for landlords and property managers. I do well enough, I always have. She passed 3 years ago. Breast cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end. My son and his wife were there for most of that, and I'll never say they weren't, because they were. He got married 5 years ago, in August, outdoor ceremony at a vineyard near Niagara. Her family paid for most of it, and I covered the bar and the photographer, about $14,000 between the two, because he asked and because I wanted to. That's where it started, though I didn't understand it that way at the time. The year after the wedding, when they were getting established, my son mentioned his car payment was tight. I offered to take over the monthly. He drove a used F-150, $487 a month, 40 months left. I added it to my accounts and we never talked about it again. A few months after that, when they found out my daughter-in-law was pregnant, I called my bank and set up an IRESP, a registered education savings plan, for the baby. $800 a month. My name as subscriber. Both kids as beneficiaries once my granddaughter arrived. Then there was the Interac e-transfer. I started sending every month, $600, which began when they had some tight months in 2021, and which had never stopped because neither of us had ever mentioned stopping it. And then I added my son to my company's life insurance rider, 2 years ago, $112 a month, because he'd mentioned the cost of personal coverage, and I thought it was the practical thing to do. I did the math one night on the back of an estimate sheet. $1,800 a month, give or take, times 5 years, plus the wedding, plus a few other things I'd rather not itemize. I hadn't mentioned any of it. Not at Christmas. Not when my daughter-in-law's father made a joke once about tradespeople being good with money. Not ever. I have a sister named Joan who lives out past the edge of town, in a house that smells like dogs and wood stove, and has for 30 years. She's 62, and she has the habit of saying the true thing out loud, which is why I only go there when I can afford to hear it. I drove out to see her the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. She poured tea neither of us touched, and I told her about the photograph. I told it the way I'd explain a job estimate. Here's what I saw, here are the numbers, here's what doesn't add up. She didn't reach across the table or make a sound of sympathy. You weren't overlooked, she said. You were arranged out. I started to say that was a strong way to put it. She picked up her phone and turned it toward me. A screenshot of my daughter-in-law's Instagram, a photo from the summer, some kind of family gathering in a backyard. My son, my daughter-in-law, both kids, her parents, her two brothers, and their families. My grandson in the other grandfather's lap, both of them laughing at something the camera didn't catch. She posted this in July, Joan said. I hadn't seen it. I wasn't following her on Instagram. I hadn't thought to be. I looked at my grandson's face. Same grin, same kid, just a different lap. When was this taken? Canada Day weekend, it looks like. 4 months before the Thanksgiving photo. The arrangement wasn't new. Joan sat back down. So here's what I want to know. If they decided you were optional in July, why did they keep depositing your money in September? I drove home with that question and spent 3 days not answering it. The Saturday after I saw Joan, I called my son. I told him I was thinking of coming for Christmas this year, that it had been a few years since we'd all done it together. There was a pause I have thought about many times since. The thing is, Dad, we're probably doing Christmas at Kelsey's family's place this year. Her mom's already planning it, and you know how her mom gets when she plans something. He paused again. You'd feel out of place, honestly. It's a big group thing. I switched the phone to my other hand. When did Christmas become their Christmas? Don't make it weird. He said it the way you say it to someone who's being unreasonable, not like a question, like a verdict. I said, okay, and I meant it. That night I opened my banking app and I canceled the e-transfer. $600 gone on a Tuesday. The app asked me to confirm. I confirmed. The car loan I couldn't do from the app. I called my bank the next morning and asked them to remove the automatic payment from my account. The woman on the phone said the loan would revert to my son's sole responsibility at the next billing cycle. I said that was fine. The insurance writer I handled through my broker, a man I've worked with for 11 years named Gary. I called his cell, explained the situation, and asked to remove my son from the policy. He said he'd send confirmation to both addresses on file. I said please do. The rest I did not cancel, I moved it. I want to be specific about this because it matters. And RESP subscriber can change the plan, change the institution, maintain full control over the account as long as the beneficiaries remain the same. I drove 40 minutes to my branch in Barrie and transferred the full balance into a new account. Still both grandkids as beneficiaries, still my name and my SIN as subscriber. Same kids. Same money. Different lock on the door. The balance at the time was $41,200. I sat in the RBC parking lot afterward and wrote a text to my son. 3 sentences. The e-transfer had ended. The car loan payment had ended. The insurance rider had ended. The rest was safe, still growing, and he could call the branch anytime he wanted and they'd confirm both kids were on it. And then, I'm still your kid's grandfather. I'm just not your bank anymore. 22 days of nothing. My phone didn't ring for 22 days, except for work calls, and once from Joan asking if I wanted to come for her birthday. I went. We had lasagna, and she didn't ask me anything about any of it, which was exactly the right thing to do. Those 22 days were the steadiest I'd felt in 3 years. I took on a full interior repaint for a 12-unit building in Innisfil, 6 days of work that needed both hands and a good playlist. I fixed the front steps on my house. 2 treads had been soft since the spring, and I'd been stepping around them like they weren't my problem. I cooked. One night I made my wife's borscht, the one with the fresh dill she grew herself, and I got it close enough that it was fine to eat alone, and almost fine to think about. On day 14, I made the mistake of opening Facebook. My son had posted a short video, shaky, his voice excited. He was standing in the driveway of a house I didn't recognize, bigger than their current place, with a for sale sign in the yard and a real estate lockbox on the door. Big things ahead, more soon. He'd signed a mortgage pre-approval, or was about to. A bigger house, a bigger payment. In a month when his car loan had reverted to his name, his monthly e-transfer had stopped, and his insurance coverage had changed without him knowing yet. I understood then exactly what was coming and how little I had prepared for it. The car loan notice went out on the 1st of the month. I know because that's when my son called for the first time in 22 days. I was on a ladder in Innisfil, pulling tape off a baseboard when my phone buzzed. Dad, I think there's an error with the car payment. The bank sent me a notice. I finished the section of tape I was on, climbed down, took a breath. No error. I stopped it. Silence then. You stopped it? I'm allowed to stop it. It was coming out of my account. Dad, his voice was tight. You can't just, I'm in the middle of. I mailed you a letter 3 weeks ago. Did you get it? He had not checked for the letter, or he had and hadn't opened it. I still don't know which. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something honestly. If you were in my position, would you have kept the rest going for the grandkids? Or would you have canceled everything, all of it, and started fresh? Comment A if you'd have kept it. Comment B if you'd have cut everything. I read every single one. Okay, back to it. My daughter-in-law's father called me on a Wednesday. His name was already in my phone, from when my son had added it years ago, and in 5 years I'd never used it, and he'd never used mine. He was smooth. I'll give him that. He talked about how much he respected me, how hard I'd worked, how much it meant to his daughter that I'd always been there for them. He mentioned family twice in the first 90 seconds. He said the word misunderstanding, like it was the most reasonable word in the language. And then gently, the way a man gets to the point when he thinks he's better at this than you. I'm sure once everyone's had a chance to talk calmly, things will settle. That's what family does. I waited. Now I know my son-in-law is going to call you. I just wanted to reach out first, man to man, because I think you know that those grandkids need stability. They need to see the adults in their lives. What did my son tell you about the Thanksgiving table? I asked. A pause, a different kind than my son's pauses. He said you had a scheduling conflict. I didn't say anything else. There wasn't anything useful to say. I told him I appreciated the call, and I hung up. Christmas came. I was invited this time. My son called and said there was a seat for me at his in-laws' place. Dinner at 6, and I should come. I said I'd be there at 6. He said great, in a tone that meant he'd been hoping I'd say 7. The house was 40 minutes outside Barrie, toward the lake. High ceilings. The kind of kitchen that gets photographed. My daughter-in-law's mother greeted me at the door with both hands like I was visiting a hospital. 14 people, long table candles. My granddaughter was the first one to spot me. She came around the corner from the living room, and for 1 second her whole face lit up and she said, "Pop," which is what she had always called me, since she was 2 years old and couldn't manage anything with more syllables. My grandson was right behind her. "That's not Pop," he said. He wasn't being mean. He was 7, and correcting what he understood to be a factual error. "That's Grandpa Brent." My granddaughter looked at her brother, then at me, the way a 4-year-old looks when she's waiting for one of the adults to sort out which version is correct. I crouched down. My right knee gave me the warning it always gives. "You call me whatever feels right," I told her, "but I want you to know who I am." She reached up and grabbed my finger the way she always has. That part hadn't changed. Dinner was fine. The food was good. My daughter-in-law's mother seated me at one end of the table, near the kitchen, and once I was there I realized she'd done me an accidental favor, because from that seat I could get up easily and refill water glasses, without asking anyone to move, which I did 3 times, and it was something to do with my hands. Her father stood up for a toast before dessert. He's good at it. He thanked everyone for coming, told a short story about his own father that landed well, and then finished with something that was clearly meant to be felt, rather than analyzed. "Family," he said, "isn't about obligation. It isn't about what anyone owes you. It's about the people who show up. The ones who are genuinely present, and those are the ones worth building around." He was looking at the tablecloth when he said it. His chin, though, was pointed about 20 degrees in my direction. 7 or 8 people made a small sound of agreement. My son was looking at his plate. My daughter-in-law's mother was nodding. I folded my napkin and set it beside my plate. My son caught me in the front hall when I was getting my coat. "You're leaving before dessert?" "I've got an early job." He didn't push back on that. We both knew I didn't have an early job. "Dad," he dropped his voice, "can we just talk about this?" Outside. It was December. -12 with the wind off the lake, the kind of cold that makes your eyes water before you've taken 3 steps. My son came out in his sweater because he thought it would be brief. It wasn't. "Why did you do it?" he said. "The transfers, the car, all of it." "I need to ask you something first." I looked at him. "When did you stop inviting me?" He didn't answer right away. He crossed his arms against the cold. Thanksgiving was their family's thing. They do it every year up at the cottage. I know. You told me that. I'm asking when you decided I wasn't going to be there. It wasn't, it wasn't a decision. It just sort of, when did you tell your kids to stop calling me Pop? That one he didn't answer at all. I looked at him for a moment. He was 43 years old, standing in the cold in his sweater, and I could see the kid underneath all of it. The same kid I'd watched come into the world in a Barry hospital and never once expected to have to convince that I belonged in his life. Here's what I want you to know, I said. The RESP didn't stop. Both kids are still on it. I'm still putting in $800 a month. You can call RBC anytime you want and they'll confirm the balance. You don't need my permission for any of that. He exhaled. Something went out of his shoulders. But the transfers are done, I said. The car loan is yours again. The insurance is yours. I'm not angry about any of it. I just needed to stop paying for something I didn't understand, and now I understand it, so I stopped. Dad, we're in the middle of trying to buy a house. I know. I can't, without the monthly. I know that too. He stood there in the cold. This is because we didn't invite you to Thanksgiving. No, I said. Thanksgiving was when I looked at my banking app and counted. I should have counted a long time ago. I got in my truck and drove home through the dark. The roads were clear. My hands were steady on the wheel, which surprised me. I'd expected them to shake. They didn't. I got home at 9:30, put the kettle on, and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. I wrote 4 things. It took me about 40 minutes and 2 cups of tea to get them into a form I was willing to send. 1. The RESP stays in my name. Both grandkids are beneficiaries. I send the statements to both parents. No request needed. The money is for school, not for anything else, and nobody touches it before then. 2. I have the grandkids every other Saturday. Not when it's convenient. Every other Saturday, same as a schedule, starting in January. 3. I find out about family events before they happen. Not on Facebook the next day. Not by accident before. 4. I don't lend money. Not to my son, not to my daughter-in-law, not for any emergency, not under any circumstance. If they're in real trouble, they call me and we talk. But the transfers are finished. I sent it by text at 11:15. He read it, I could see the check mark, and didn't respond until morning. That's fair. 2 words. That's what 5 years, and $100 and something thousand came out to. But they were the right 2 words, and I've learned to take the right thing in whatever shape it arrives. The first Saturday in January, I pulled up to their house at 10 in the morning, and my son brought the kids to the door. My granddaughter was in her coat before the door was all the way open. My grandson stood at the top of the porch steps, with his hands in his pockets like a man who has business to conduct. Are you our grandpa? He asked me. I had not expected the question. I should have. I am, I said. How do I know? I took my wallet out of my jacket. Behind my debit card, I've kept a photograph for 7 years. A small one, printed at a drugstore, a little scratched at the edges now. Me in a hospital chair the day my grandson was born. He was 40 minutes old, and I was the second person to hold him, right after his mother, because that's the correct order. I look startled in the picture, which is accurate, because nothing prepares you for the weight of a newborn. How real and present and certain it is. I passed him the photo. He looked at it for a long time. He's a careful kid. He's always been a careful kid. You were there? First person through the door after your dad called me. He thought about that, handed the photo back. Okay, he said, Grandpa. First time in months. I didn't make anything of it, I said. Good. You want waffles? And he said yes, and my granddaughter was already pulling on my hand toward the truck, and that was that. We went to the diner on Dunlop Street. Waffles for them, coffee for me, a shared order of bacon that my granddaughter ate most of. She put a sticker on my jacket sleeve at some point, a green star from a sheet she'd had in her coat pocket. I forgot it was there. Found it when I got home that night, peeling off the wool, and I stood in my kitchen and looked at it for a moment before I set it on the counter. I didn't throw it away. The RESP crossed 47,000 in April. I still put in 800 on the first of every month. I've told that number to exactly 2 people, my sister Joan, and now you. My son and his wife didn't end up getting the bigger house. The pre-approval came back lower than they'd expected. They're still in their place in Barrie, and from what I can tell, they're managing. He calls more now, not a lot more, but more. Not always for a reason. sometimes just to say something happened and he thought I'd want to know. That's new. My daughter-in-law surprised me in February. She called on a Tuesday morning with no reason I'd expected. She talked for a while about things that weren't really about anything. Then she got to it. She talked about the Muskoka Thanksgivings, about how they're mandatory, not optional, and how the seating at that table is her mother's domain and her father's approval, and how she's been inside that system since she was 17 years old and sometimes can't see anything outside it. She talked about the group chats she's on and the group chats she isn't, about having to account for money over a certain amount. I listened. I offered her coffee. She wasn't there, it was a phone call, but it's what I said anyway. And she laughed a little at that, which was something. She didn't apologize. I didn't expect her to. Some things people can't say out loud yet. There are doors you let a person walk through on their own time. My daughter-in-law's father and I see each other at soccer games in the spring. My grandson plays on Saturdays, which are my Saturdays, so I'm there on the sideline with a coffee. Jim stands on the other side of the field. We've nodded at each other twice. That's the arrangement, though nobody said so out loud. My wife used to tell me I was too quiet about the things that mattered. She'd say, "You hold everything so long it goes stale before anyone else even knows you had it." She wasn't wrong. She was rarely wrong about me, which is both the best and the hardest thing about being known by someone for that long. The Saturday visits are every other week now, same as always. We do homework sometimes, or nothing in particular, or we drive out to the lake just to see what it looks like that day. Last month, my grandson helped me recalk a bathtub at a rental unit I manage. He was serious about it, the way he gets serious about things, and he did a good job, and I told him so, and he stood back and looked at the work with the face of a person who has just figured out that something was difficult, and they did it anyway. That's the seat I have in this family now, not the head of any table, not the chair with the paper crown, just the one where someone put my name before I walked in. Here's what I know now that I didn't know a year ago. The quieter you are about what you give, the more invisible you become, not just to the people you're helping, but to yourself. Because silence doesn't read as patience, it reads as permission. And once you've given that kind of permission long enough, the people receiving it start to believe it's the natural order of things. They're not wrong to believe it. You taught them. Stopping those transfers wasn't punishment. It wasn't leverage. It was the first time in 5 years I'd treated my own name like it was worth putting on a list. That's the part I had to lose at Thanksgiving to understand. If any part of this landed somewhere for you, there are more stories in the description from people who figured out where the line was and finally drew it. Thanks for being here all the way to the end.